Testing 1, 2, 3. Hey, how's it going? It's me, Auntie Annie. I'm just gonna finish this little jingle dress. You know the one. This guy right here. I ended up having to make a whole new thing for it, and I'll show you what I did. The original jingle dress. This is the bottom of the jingle dress, and right here, this is where the zipper was. Now what I did when I cut this jingle dress is if you look right here where the waist meets the dress, you'll see it's there. Then all of a sudden you notice it goes in. So what I did when I cut it, and I didn't realize, is I did not cut it so that the pattern didn't have a zipper on it. I was just going to add the zipper in. However, I had neglected to add more room on the side, like about another inch on the side, so that I'd have room for the zipper. So that's what I did wrong. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut it here at the waist, and I'm going to attach this part to it. Now this part here, I did the zipper up, and so I did the zipper. Zipper is nice and clean, and it's not puckering. It's seamless. There's a nice you can barely see it, and so that's what we call a hidden zipper. And so I'm gonna be doing that today. But the reason that I put on my camera is I wanted to talk about something. When my son was little, when he was probably around, I'm gonna say grade 3 is about where it started. He ran into some issues in school, and we moved around a lot. In the first 2 years of his schooling, I homeschooled him. I had him in kindergarten out in Punachai when we lived out there, and then I ended up moving to Regina, and he was at a school in Regina, and there some stuff happened at the school that I didn't like. It wasn't anything to do with us, but I didn't like the atmosphere or the environment, and so I took him out of school and I decided to homeschool him. And at that time in my life, I was already looking into living in a van and being mobile and, working and moving around a lot. So I thought it would probably be better if I homeschooled him anyways. So I had him homeschooled for like the first 3 years of his educational life. And then after that, when we moved out to Kwakatus again, I got a job out there as an addictions worker, and Lakota wanted to go back to school, real school. He said he didn't want to be in homeschool, and so I put him in school, and I put him in one of the schools out there, and I thought it was pretty cool because when he had first gone to kindergarten out there, he had made a friend in that school, and he and that boy were best friends back in kindergarten. And I said to him, I said, "Oh, that's awesome! You'll be in school with that guy, and you already know him, and so you'll have a friend." And he's like, "Yeah, that'll be good," and he was excited. Well, as his time went on, Lakota ended up not being friends with that boy. That boy ended up becoming one of Lakota's biggest bullies in his life, and he bullied Lakota a lot. And one of the worst incidents that happened with my boy was I got to school to pick him up at the end of his school day, and when he came into the car, he had no shoes on, and we didn't know what happened to his shoes. He wouldn't tell me. He just said, let's go. He didn't want to tell me. Finally, when we got home, I got it out of him. He had been beaten up that day, and those boys took his shoes and threw them on top of the school. And what I didn't know was that before they threw them on top of the school, they had urinated all over Lakota's feet and his shoes. And then when he Yeah, so anyway, so they ended up throwing his shoes up on top of the school. And we were never wealthy. Like I've always worked for myself. I've always done my workshops and stuff. And as an entrepreneur, it's always been, I've never made like a whole lot of money being an entrepreneur. For us, it's like feast and famine. When I get a contract, that contract has to do me for however long until I get another contract. That's how I work, right? That's why I supplement my income with my art, which is my ribbon skirts, dresses, regalia, jewelry, different things that I make, and my cooking contracts. That's why I'm a caterer as well, and so I've always been very, flexible with what I do for a living. And so when I found out that that happened to Lakota, in my mind, because I've been in recovery, I'm a recovering addict, and I've been in recovery, like now it's been 35 years that I've been in recovery. So at that time, I think I was probably about 20 years in. I had my son when I was 34. So yeah, so he probably would have been about maybe about 8 or 9 back then. So yeah, so anyways, I had the mindset that because I grew up in a very, with very chaotic belief system. I was taught to fight. When I went to school, I was taught that if anyone hits you, you hit them back. I was taught that if someone starts a fight, you end it, and so that's how I was taught. And when I was raising up Lakota, I had gotten into a lot of trouble with those belief systems, right? I fought a lot in school. I bullied people in school. I ended up getting charged when I was in grade 11 for assaulting somebody. And like so many things that had happened to me had been violent based, right? And I didn't want my son to follow in that path. And so when I found out that he was being bullied in school, my thoughts was, okay, if you're being bullied, then you need to tell the teachers, you need to talk to kids and all of this. And I thought I could resolve this by being helpful. So I talked with the principal and I said, well, I noticed that Lakota's being bullied, so why don't I come to the school? And I was such a helicopter parent, why don't I come to the school and I'll teach a beating class, and then that way the kids will, learn to like me and Lakota, and he'll fit in better. And so that's what I did. I went down to the school. I was trying to be helpful, and I, taught this beating class, and I was being nice to Lakota's bullies. It didn't work. Lakota still got bullied afterwards. And so he ended up at the end of it all, when all of this stuff happened, the very end of it all was his shoes getting thrown on the roof. That was like the big climactic end to him being bullied there. And he told me, he said, Mom, if I go back to that school, he said, I'm going to kill myself. And this is my kid who is in grade 4 telling me this. And I took him serious, because when I had tried to kill myself when I was 10 years old. I took a rope and I put it around rafters in a barn when I was 10 years old. And I know that that's not something, saying those words is not something that you say for attention. I know that, and so I looked at my son and I knew he was serious, and I said, okay, fine, you won't go back there. So I took him out of school. We didn't resolve any issues with those kids. I took him out of school, and he went to another school. He was fine in the other school for a while. It went okay. He had friends and he was okay. And then, but what would happen was we would go to powwows in the summer, and I didn't know that those same kids that were at that first school there were at the powwows, and they were picking on him at powwow. And I gave him money, and I told him, I said, well, why don't you go to the store and go and get yourself some popcorn or whatever, like some money. He came back and he was bruised and beaten up, and he was wearing his regalia. So I was furious. I couldn't believe this was happening. He had gotten, pulverized at the powwow. And I asked him, like, what happened? And he told me it was those same kids from that same school, like the first school. And they took his money and they beat him up. I went and I confronted the kid's mother, and I told her what happened, and she wouldn't talk to her son. She couldn't believe that her son done that, and blah blah blah. And so I was really frustrated. And old me, the Annie that likes to fight and be a bully and all of that, was furious. Like, that part of me was just screaming, like go and slap the mom around and show that kid what bullying looks like and blah blah blah. Anyways, that didn't happen. But what I did though was I talked with my boy, and we started seeing a therapist together, him and I, because me being a bully from the past and him being a kid who gets bullied in the future, in the present, was not doing us any good, and we needed to learn how to overcome that. And we were still in that area, and that kid was around the area. So we worked with this therapist together, and I started doing research on bullying, and I realized that the dynamics of bullying, it's like a pack mentality, it's like a group mentality. And if you're being bullied, it's because you don't fit into their group, or they don't want you to fit into their group. Somebody always has to be the underdog in that kind of a mentality. And the bully is the one that the whole group kind of all take direction from, or they look up to. And so what my son and I learned about that is that in order for him not to be bullied, he had to have confidence, and he had to have that self-assurance. And so that's what we worked on. We worked on his self-esteem. By this time, Lakota was probably about 13 years old. We went out to an AA roundup, and I was asked to speak at the roundup, and so I went and I spoke. And this kid's mom must have been getting sober or whatever, but she was at the roundup and she had him with her, and there was a bunch of other kids from that community that were there, and there was a dance contest. My son is a fancy bustle dancer, so he can move. He's a very good dancer. When we were at that dancing contest, Lakota started dancing, and she started doing hip hop dancing and all that kind of like the fancy moves and stuff. And it, how they have like those dance circles just kind of bust out and everybody dances? Well, that's what happened. And so Lakota went in there, and they were trying to exclude him. And all of a sudden, where he was, like the group was over here, so where he was over here, that kid that was bullying him was dancing, and so all these kids were watching him. And all of a sudden, over in the corner here, Lakota started dancing, and the guy who was running the lights noticed Lakota dancing in the corner, so he averted the spotlight and he put it on Lakota, and Lakota just started dancing and dancing, he got right into the music, and it would just take over on him. And all of the kids turned around and they all watched Lakota dance. And now at the end of it all, they gave out an award for who was, the best dancer, who was the crowd favorite. And Lakota ended up being the crowd favorite. And so he won an award, and he won $100. He was pretty happy with himself at that time. And I remember the bully came up to Lakota and was trying to insult him. And Lakota just brushed him off and everything like that. And his insults had no impact on Lakota at that time. And my kid in that moment championed himself, right? And he reclaimed his energy from this boy. And since then, Lakota's, of course, now he's a man, right? Like he's 25 years old. But since then, he's always been able to be self-assured and have that inner confidence. But the long story of this, when we do our parenting program, one of the components of the parenting program is that story, but it's from Lakota's point of view. And my son helps me facilitate the parenting program, because what we talk about in our parenting program, the Keeping Our Kids Safe Parenting, has been issues and topics that has affected the two of us in our journey parenting. And so that's one of the things that we look at. We look at bullying, and we talk to parents who are parents of bullies, and we talk to parents who are parents of children that are subject to being bullied. And so those are the things that we discuss in that group. And so if you're interested in any of what we do, or anything like that, give us a call or find us on the internet. I'll put the website down in the comments here. And reach out to us, because we would like to tour across Canada sharing our workshops, sharing our story, because I believe my son and I have a very, very positive, powerful story to share. And I invite you to follow along with us. Thank you.